energy prices in the UK will rise once again by another 6.4%. The average household will now pay around £1,849 a year. That's £600 more than just 3 years ago. And it's not only families feeling the pressure, businesses are struggling too. The UK now faces the highest industrial electricity costs in Europe, hitting our manufacturing and chemical industries hard. Factories are shutting down, small businesses are cutting hours, ordinary people are watching their bills rise faster than their paychecks. High energy prices aren't just numbers. They're quietly reshaping the British economy, fueling inflation, deepening fuel poverty, and squeezing living standards. But here's the surprising part. Despite producing record levels of renewable energy, our bills keep going up. Why? That's what we'll uncover. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why your bills are rising, who's profiting, and most importantly, how we can fix it. Quick note before we dive in. If you're tired of struggling with rising costs and want to understand how to actually change things, stay with me until the end of this video, because the truth you'll hear in the next 10 minutes could change the way you see the UK's entire energy system. The renewable paradox: why prices keep rising. Even as wind power grows, over the past few years, the UK has made huge progress in renewable energy. Solar and wind energy are now cheaper to produce than fossil fuels. In fact, in 2024, the UK generated more low-carbon power than ever before. For the first time, renewable energy officially overtook fossil fuels. That should mean lower prices, right? So why are bills still climbing? Here's the hidden truth. Renewable energy is not consistent. On a freezing January morning, when it's dark and windless, our solar panels and turbines generate almost nothing. But that's exactly when demand is highest. So what happens? The national grid has to call on gas power stations to fill the gap. But keeping those gas stations open just for emergencies is expensive. And that's where things go wrong. Because the price of electricity is set by the most expensive source used at any given moment. So even if 99% of your power comes from cheap wind, the final price is still determined by that 1% of costly gas. That's like buying an entire meal at Tesco prices, but paying a Michelin star price just because you added one luxury ingredient. The monopoly problem: how a few companies hold the grid hostage. When the grid struggles to meet demand, private gas suppliers step in. And here's where things turn from frustrating to outrageous. In January 2025, 2 gas power stations were paid up to 100 times the normal rate to keep generating electricity. One station demanded £5,000 per megawatt hour. That's 40 times more than their actual running cost. Why would they charge that much? Because they can. They hold monopoly power, and they know the grid has no alternative. This crisis didn't happen by accident. Since 2015, the government has poured £20 billion into contracts designed to guarantee backup power for the grid. But instead of stabilizing prices, it has locked us into decades of inflated bills. Between 2020 and 2023, UK energy suppliers, producers, and the national grid made a combined profit of over £450 billion. Meanwhile, fuel poverty has hit record levels, and ordinary households are footing the bill. The hidden cost of renewables: balancing the grid. You might think renewables are cheap, and in theory they are, but getting electricity to where it's needed, when it's needed, is the real challenge. When it's windy in Scotland but calm in London, the grid has to transport energy hundreds of miles. And that balancing act is getting more expensive every year. In 2024 alone, the UK spent over £1 billion paying wind farms to shut down on windy days because there weren't enough power cables to carry all that energy south. Yes, you heard that right. We're paying renewable farms to stop producing power. That's not a failure of green energy. That's a failure of infrastructure. A decade of underinvestment in power cables has left us with an unbalanced grid. We're generating more clean power than ever before, but we can't store it or move it efficiently. Storage is the missing piece. If the UK wants truly affordable green energy, we need to store it. Right now, our entire battery storage system can only hold about 6 gigawatt hours of power, enough for just a few minutes of national demand. Imagine if we could store a week's worth of wind power or a day's worth of solar energy. Energy prices could drop dramatically. That's why experts are calling for massive investment in battery technology, pumped water storage, and nuclear backup systems. Because until we can store clean power, we'll always be forced to fall back on expensive gas, and the same companies will keep profiting every winter. Why the UK pays more than Europe? Another problem, geography and isolation. Europe's countries are linked by a web of interconnected gas and electricity networks, sharing energy when demand spikes. But the UK is an island. Our connections are weak, our grid is old, and our import capacity is limited. A project to import solar power from Morocco was once floated, a great idea, but the £20 billion cost and distance make it nearly impossible. This lack of connection means we can't import cheap energy when we need it most, leaving us vulnerable every time global gas prices rise. So what can be done? Here's the good news. There are solutions, and they're surprisingly achievable. 1. Reward consumers for saving energy. If we pay producers huge sums to generate electricity at peak times, we should also reward households and businesses for reducing their usage. Some companies like Octopus Energy already do this, running saving sessions where customers get paid to cut usage during high-demand hours. In one session, they save 100 megawatts, the same output as an entire gas power station. If expanded nationally, this could cut bills and emissions at the same time. 2. End the monopoly power. No private company should have the power to hold the grid hostage. The energy market needs tighter regulation or partial nationalization, ensuring it's run for people, not profit. This isn't about politics, it's about fairness. 3. Build smarter infrastructure. We need to stop focusing only on building new wind farms and start investing in the cables and storage systems that make them work efficiently. And while burying power lines underground might look prettier, it's 6 times more expensive. For now, overground lines may be our best path to affordable energy. 4. Insulate homes and modernize. Heating better insulated homes use less energy, permanently lowering bills. The UK also lags far behind in heat pump adoption, while Europe races ahead. A national upgrade could slash both emissions and household costs. 5. Local pricing. Imagine cheaper electricity in the areas that generate it, like Scotland and East Anglia. Local pricing would reward communities for supporting wind and solar, attract data centers and industries to low-cost areas, and stop the insane situation where we pay wind farms to switch off. The bigger picture. The UK's energy crisis isn't just about gas or wind. It's about who controls power, literally and politically. For decades, we've treated electricity like a luxury product instead of a basic necessity. But energy is the foundation of everything, from heating your home to running hospitals and factories. The truth is, we can fix this. We can build a system that's cheaper, cleaner, and fairer, but only if we invest smartly, hold monopolies accountable, and reward efficiency, not exploitation. The UK's high energy prices aren't inevitable. They're the result of choices, and the next few years will decide whether we keep paying more every winter or finally take control of our energy future. If you care about building a fairer, more sustainable Britain, don't just complain about your bill. Share this video, talk about it, and keep learning. Because the more people understand why prices are high, the harder it becomes for anyone to hide behind excuses. And if you're serious about change, stay tuned. The next video explores real solutions that could cut your bills in half. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Together, we can power a better future.